Grab your favorite beverage. It's time for the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast.
What's up, fantasy freaks and geeks? Welcome to the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast. This is part one of the Week 2 preview. And last week we saw one explosive play after another. If I had told you in the beginning of the week that the top 16 wide receivers in a half PPR league would include names like Michael Gallup, Danny Amendola, Terry McLaurin, DJ Shark, Philip Dorsett, I think you would have thought I was kidding, but I'm being serious. These guys are really up there. We saw dudes like Sammy Watkins, Deshaun Jackson, John Brown, Marquise Brown, or John Ross, sorry. These explosive, deep threat wide receivers just absolutely ate last week. In this preview episode, we're going to go through the players that had some injuries in week 1. We got some guys that are going to miss significant time. Some guys may only miss a couple weeks. We'll go through all those guys. We'll drop in our DFS lineup of the week. I know last week Adam's lineup didn't do as good as he had hoped for, but that's why there's another week. We'll give it another shot, see how it goes. And then after that, we will finish up with the Thursday night game for week 2, which is the Tampa Bay Bucks playing in Carolina against the Panthers. So here we go. We're going to get right into these injuries. Probably at the top of the list, we got 2 quarterbacks. Patrick Mahomes, he walked off the field with an ankle sprain. They taped him up. He came back on the field. He looked fine as far as throwing the ball, but his mobility was definitely hindered there. So that's something to keep in mind. Obviously you're never going to sit Patrick Mahomes, but just don't expect him to be making these crazy no-look pass bootlegs and running around everywhere. I think you're going to see what we saw after this ankle sprain was taped up on Sunday, which is they're going to make him stay there in the pocket, and they're going to make sure that the protections are solid for him. So I don't think he's going to miss any time, but it is definitely something to keep in mind. Don't be expecting Superman Pat Mahomes. Just expect, a slightly less version of Superman, which, I don't know, I guess that's kind of Batman maybe. Then you got Nick Foles, who broke his collarbone, probably going to be out. Who knows? I'm not a doctor, but apparently these are 8 to 10 week type of injuries. Another guy, big name, Patrick Mahomes' running mate, Tyreek Hill. Seemed like it was a collarbone, but apparently it's more likely to be an SE joint, which, from my understanding, is an injury on pretty much the opposite side of the collarbone, so not on the shoulder side, but on the chest side. And apparently he had some type of it was dislocated somehow. Ian Rappaport actually reported that it's a very rare injury, but it's the same injury that Packers wide receiver Jake Camaro had last year, and he missed about 2 months. So hopefully Tyreek's not going to be gone that long. If they have to, they can put him on the injured reserve designated to return, which would be 8 weeks. So, hopefully he doesn't miss that much time, but it seems like he's going to miss at least a month. So keep our fingers crossed for Tyreek. Hopefully you got an IR slot on your team. Another guy, Joe Mixon, he's going to be day-to-day. He's got an ankle sprain. Apparently he might still be able to play on Sunday, but, we'll have to wait and see. And if you're the Joe Mixon owner, just like we spent some time in the episode RB before the season started going over handcuffs, this is why you handcuff a guy like this, because now all that, if he misses, all that work's going right to Giovanni Bernard. who last year we saw had a pretty good game. So there are a couple games in Joe Mixon's absence. Another running back, Telvin Coleman, with another ankle sprain. It seems pretty universal that he is going to miss some time. It's going to be a couple weeks at least. So fire up Matt Breida if you got him. I know I got him in one of my leagues, and I'm excited about it. He did lead the team in carries last week with 15. Raheem Mostert, had 9 carries, and he actually had 40 yards. He was more efficient with his carries than Breida was, so hopefully we don't see a 50-50 split. Hopefully we see Breida get the majority of those carries. And our last running back here, Darius Geis. Apparently he had an MRI after the game on the other knee, not the ACL that he tore last year, but the other knee, and apparently he's got some meniscus, something going on with the meniscus. So, speaking from someone who has had multiple ankle problems in the past, it's a compensation thing. I feel like always we see these guys. Last year with Dalvin Cook, the other leg, he was having hamstring problems. It just seems like it's a thing where if a guy has an ACL injury, you can almost bet your money that the other leg or the other hip or the other ankle is going to have some kind of compensatory injury to go along with it. So, and it was very strange that Adrian Peterson was a healthy scratch for them. I saw Chris Thompson actually had a pretty good game. I think he caught about 7 or 8 passes last week, and probably can expect the same thing from him this week. I mean, I know a lot of that had to do with the game script that they were in. They slowly kept giving up more and more points to the Eagles. They let them creep back into that game, then they let them blow it out. But yeah, I mean, Chris Thompson had 10 targets last week, so if he's going to see that. With no Darius Geis and with obviously the team not completely convinced on Adrian Peterson, if he's going to be a healthy scratch, that he can carry the ball either. So I think Chris Thompson may be a big play for me this upcoming week. Maybe I'll make just a Thursday night lineup in DFS and cash in on the Chris Thompson play there. We're going to go over to some wide receivers now. We got Sterling Shepard, who's going to be in the concussion protocol. We got Devin Funchess, another broken collarbone. Seems like a lot of these guys, they're just coming down on the shoulder. And, you can say what you want about preseason. You can say what you want about training camp. But I think it's pretty evident that over the past few years we've seen more and more injuries in the beginning of the season because it's obvious that guys are not hitting each other in training camp. They're not playing enough on preseason. And you see these kind of injuries. So Devin Funchess, another collarbone. Probably going to be out another 6 to 8 weeks, whatever it ends up being. We got another wide receiver, Albert Wilson, probably one of the most talented players on this Dolphins offense. That just every week it seems like they keep getting another jab at him. He's got a calf injury. We'll see if he'll even be able to suit up. That poor offense there. They look pretty bad. And speaking of the Dolphins last week, it was very strange. Right before the game started, Kalen Ballage was announced as the starter over Kenyon Drake, which is not what I think a lot of people were expecting as far as the running back field goes with the Dolphins. But we'll have to see how that goes going forward. Another wide receiver that got injured was Mike Williams, but apparently he seemed to be fine. He walked off the field without a limp. He should be good to go for next week. So that is the injury report after week 1 going into week 2. Some guys to, especially the Tyreek Hill and the Darius Geis injury. These are going to be multi-week injuries. So, plan accordingly. Make sure you're right, checking out that waiver wire. Beginning of the season, you see a lot of big names going, or maybe not necessarily big names, but you see a lot of guys get picked up in the on the first or second week of the waiver wire that really end up helping your team throughout the season goes. So definitely be checking that out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and drop in Adam Natris's DFS lineup of the week for week 2, and then we'll come back and do the Thursday night game. We are here with Adam Natras. He has for us the Week 2 DFS lineup of the week for us. Adam, what's going on? How did Week 1 do? Did we win any money on our Week 1 lineup?
Well, guys, first off, thank you for having me back, especially after how Week 1, unfortunately went with the lineup that was read on air. It did not fare well. There were some good picks. Obviously, Dalvin Cook had a very good game. Leonard Fournette really didn't come through. Obviously, that team did not consist of the big hitters of the Week 1 lineups, which were, Sammy Watkins, Deshaun Jackson, Lamar Jackson. So, yeah, Week 1, that lineup read on air. Not as good as it could have been. I apologize for that. And going into Week 2, we're going to take our best swing at it again.
So, hold on, real quick. So that lineup was you played that in a large format tournament style game, right?
Yes, I did. So that was in a almost 40,000 person tournament style game.
So why don't we, with these DFS lineups of the week for the podcast, why don't we do just like those smaller 100-person type games where it's maybe where our percentages are a little better to take home a win, right?
Yeah, no, I think that's the way to go. I think also I got to pick the right quarterback. Having Jared Goff come out and swing and miss for us didn't really do much, now did it?
It did not, but hey, we're here with Week 2 now, so let's move on from Week 1. It's in the past. Week 2 is here. Who do you like? What are the values you're looking at? What's going on for Week 2 here?
Awesome. So as we go into this, we're going to do our best in Week 2 to, again, try and pick the guys that are hopefully going to go off. There were some random shots that came out of nowhere last week, as well as some guys that maybe we should have foreseen them having a pretty good start. So with that in mind, going into Week 2, first things first, the quarterback position. I know Mahomes, Watson, the big names did work last week. But there is a guy by the name of Tom Brady receiving a pretty big weapon going into Week 2.
Yeah, I'd say so.
None other than Antonio Brown. So for $7,800 versus a Miami team that just got blown out of the water by Lamar Jackson last weekend, I'm going with Tom Brady. I think that's a great price. I think that where we're at with that, you can get a pretty good value.
$700-800 for a guy that has a very good chance of throwing 4 touchdown passes again.
Right. I mean, there's a very good chance that Dolphins team has double-digit touchdowns thrown on them in the first 2 weeks of the NFL season.
Right.
Now, for my running back position, right, we're going to go with the running back next. Austin Eckler, Week 1, he looks fantastic. He looks fantastic. And they're pricing him at $7,500. He's playing Detroit. Just the way they get him the ball and work him into the offense, I really think out of anybody, he's one of the more likely guys to maintain not that 40-point monster of a game, but I think you're going to see a real good game from him again. And at $7,500, you're still maintaining a pretty good value.
Yeah. I mean, a dude that's going to get 12 carries and he's going to see, what did he get, 7 targets last week? So, I mean, 13 touches / targets for a dude that cost how much?
Last week he was cheaper, but this week he's $7,500.
Yeah, right. That's such an awesome
mid-tier
offense to be an awesome offense to be on, especially for a pass catching running back. So I like that pick. What else we got at running back?
And they're going to raise the value if he does it again. So get in while you can.
Yeah.
So, and speaking of great value, Josh Jacobs had a great first game in the NFL. He is playing a Kansas City defense that's different, but he looked good. And for $6,500, I think you're going to be able to get a pretty good value out of that price for a running back 1 who had a good Week 1. So right there, I mean, your first 3 picks, you're getting real good value out of guys that have a good chance to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And in that same vein, let's flip it over to that receiver position. I got to go to the guy that beat me in my season-long leagues for $5,900, Terrell Williams. I mean, what do you think? He looked pretty good last night.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So at $5,900, I'm going to take him. Now, I'm saving some money on the back end here, because for right now, where it's at, you don't need to spend every dime. I think teams that won did not spend every dime week one. I think you just got to go with the guys that have a chance to really maintain a level of volume. And with that in mind, John Ross, boy, did he come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But Tyler Boyd, Tyler Boyd operates as a very good number 2 receiver. And they need someone to fill in for A.J. Green. And anyone that's getting 12 targets and is being priced at $6,400 playing San Francisco seems like a pretty good choice to me. So right now I got John Ross in there. I think that he could do it again, and again it's a low price, so why not? I mean, he doesn't need to do much, but if he gets 12 targets, he has a good chance of getting you the value that you would need.
It's all about those big plays, right? Those explosive plays that end in touchdowns. That's what you want.
Right, exactly. And Andy Dalton is not anything special, right? So when he locks into a guy, that's where the ball's going. And if the guy can catch him, why not?
He attempted 51 passes last week and had 418 passing yards. So this new offense, maybe this is what we're going to come to expect from them as far as this volume of passing.
I can only talk to the Andy Dalton I know and love.
That love, yeah, right.
And that Andy Dalton's throwing that ball to John Ross 12 to 15 times again.
And I remember, at the beginning of the season, or before the season, talking about this new offensive coordinator and the guys that he has on the offense now, comparative to what the Rams had on offense as far as the receivers go. And these guys match up pretty well with the skill. John Ross looks pretty comparable to a Brandon Cooks. A.J. Green and Robert Woods have a comparable body type and whatnot. So, maybe this John Ross maybe this is what we will see more of, whether A.J. Green plays or not.
I mean, let's hope so. I know it could be exciting. Again, I never hold my breath for Andy Dalton.
Okay.
Again, just from experience with him. But I liked what we saw with him, with John Ross at least. And I think for that price and, like you said, the excitement behind the potential, why not?
So we got at wide receiver so far, John Ross and Tyrell Williams. Who is our third wide receiver?
This is where I'm going to blow some minds here, but I'm going to go none other than Sammy Watkins. At $7,400, they still have not priced him all the way up yet.
Right.
And after the Tyreek Hill situation, I'm sure you're going to explain it further. How can you not go with Sammy Watkins right here?
Yeah, dude. With Hill down, you got to expect Sammy Watkins is going to get another 10 targets at least. That last week he had 11. Had 200 yards with 9 catches. He had 3 touchdowns. If they can do that against Jacksonville, they can do that against anybody, and especially a young Raiders defense that they're going to be playing in week 2. So, I totally love you. Sammy Watkins for less than $8,000?
Unbelievable, right?
That's
they
wild.
Don't price them up until they see it at least twice. So, hop on. I mean, you're going to have money at the end of this lineup, but with good reason.
Wow, okay, cool. All right, so that's our 3 receivers. What are we doing at tight end and flex, Adam?
So, right now, my tight end and flex situation is kind of unique in that I'm going for some touchdowns on this option. So for tight end, I'm going with Delaney Walker again. Him and Mariota came out firing. They looked really good. And from the tight end position, I mean, Delaney's clearly still his main target. He was looking at him. They really, I think they shocked everybody beating up on the Browns like that. And Indianapolis has a good defense. So, I think you're going to have to see Mariota go into his guy even a little more so, just to maintain that safe level of flow to the offense.
Okay.
So yeah, Delaney Welker, 5,900. I just think he's going to get some good targets, possibly in the end zone.
A volume tight end. Okay.
And now here is my highest priced player of the week, right? At the flex position. As I've mentioned, that always ends up being where I have the most money. I know I went straight down quarterback to tight end, but as I mentioned last week, I do it in a way that the flex has the money left on it. And this is what's unique about the lineup. I'm going to give you a second tight end in Travis Kelce.
Okay.
I know he had a bit of a flat week 1, but it's Travis Kelce. And no Tyreek Hill.
So now, if you're going to play this, I guess it's kind of a stack with Watkins and Kelce, then
why not go with Mahomes?
Yeah, then why not pay up for Mahomes and thin out somewhere else? Because if you're gonna pay for a wide receiver and the tight end, both guys who are gonna get the overwhelming majority of the targets in that game, why not put in Mahomes there? Is it because you're trying to save money at quarterback?
So as I did it, I did that with the thought of that potential. Except in order to have Travis Kelce and Sammy Watkins, you actually are not able to pay all the way up to the $9,000 it would take to get Patrick Mahomes.
What about switching out Delaney Walker for for Travis Kelce, and then just getting a cheaper flex?
So now, normally, obviously, I've preached that connection. At the same point, I am also very excited about Tom Brady with his weapons. It's just hard to figure out what weapon that is. But when you when you change to go to a lower flex, right? Now you have $6,000 to work with. You would actually have to get somebody in the $4,800 range,
right? Which
to
is
be able to go up and get Mahomes.
That's like bottom dollar right there. So okay.
So you're looking at Frank Gore, Justice Hill. So yeah, you're really getting low and hoping. You're hoping too much for something that most likely won't happen. So to even it out, while you can't get Mahomes, I think having Brady is a good option. Plus, if you just have Brady, you don't have to try and guess necessarily who he's going to throw that ball to a lot. You might think it's Antonio, might be Josh Gordon.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because they're all going to catch balls, and he's gonna have 300 plus yards passing anyway. I feel you. All right, so
I think Tom Brady's most likely to throw 5 touchdowns.
Right. What are you doing at defense?
Well, so defense, I have none other than the Chicago Bears playing Denver. I think Chicago's going to come out. I mean, what they did to the Packers, and that's the Packers. I think Chicago is the type of defense this week that could actually really make or break a lineup. And so I definitely was going with them. Now, to your point with Mahomes, you could take that defense and you could look possibly down and, Seahawks playing Pittsburgh. I don't know. You never know. They're at home. Pittsburgh is. I'm saying, hate to go against Ben at home. There's just no necessarily great matchups. The Giants are playing Buffalo, but, Buffalo looks surprising.
Mm-hmm.
So to keep it an even keel lineup, all the way down, I'm going with Chicago's defense, rounding it out. And I think that this lineup will be looking pretty good at the end of week 2.
Cool. All right. Can you just give us a quick little rundown of your team again, and then we'll get you out of here?
Yeah. So we're looking at Tom Brady for 7,800 at quarterback. The 2 running backs are Austin Eckler for 7,500, Josh Jacobs 6,500. Our receivers: Terrell Williams 5,900. John Ross, 6,400, and Sammy Watkins, 7,400. Our tight end and flex. At the tight end, we have Delaney Welker for 5,900, and then the flex, big dog, Travis Kelce for 8,000. Rounding out the lineup is the Chicago Bears defense for $4,500. I hope on this week 2, you win some money on this line.
All right, man. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. We will talk to you next week with the Week 3 DFS lineup of the week. And we're back with the Week 2, Part 1 edition of the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast. We're going to look at the Thursday night game here. We got the Tampa Bay Bucks and the Carolina Panthers, both teams coming off of a loss in Week 1. Both teams with a young quarterback that played pretty sloppy in Week 1. We saw Jameis, he played like he usually does, very inaccurate, flat out reckless with the ball. I mean, the dude had 2 fumbles, 3 interceptions. Both quarterbacks were sacked 3 times. Cam also had a pick. Both of these quarterbacks played pretty bad. So I think you're going to see a slightly more conservative approach from both of these offenses going into Week 2, at least in the beginning of the game. Try and get these guys settled down after what was a pretty bad Week 1 for them. And I know, Bruce Arians preaches the no risk it, no biscuit philosophy, but 5 turnovers, it's never going to win you a football game, and it sure as hell is not going to help your fantasy value. So hopefully Jameis can learn to, play it, not be so reckless with the ball. Looking at the running backs, Ronald Jones looked pretty good compared to last year. In Week 1, he looked like he actually belonged on the NFL field. He had 13 carries for 75 yards. It's 5.8 yards per carry. It's pretty good. And he also caught his only target for a nice chunk of 18 yards. So, yes, he wasn't the featured back on the day. You look at his snap counts versus Peyton Barber snap counts. Jones 31%, Peyton Barber 36%. So slightly in the favor of Peyton Barber. But Jones did get more carries. Ronald had 13 carries to Peyton Barber's 8. He had, like I said, 75 yards. It's not a bad game. And with Peyton Barber only catching 2 of his 4 targets, turning him into 12 yards, could we see maybe some more of that, those RB targets, maybe 1 or 2 of them go over to Ronald now after Peyton not really showing up? Who knows? The game script was kind of more in the favor of Peyton Barber anyway because, like I said, James played so bad he allowed 2 return touchdowns. Again, maybe with the Jameis Winston turnovers, will Ronald Jones see more touches? Maybe, hopefully. I really do think with Arians there in this offense, I think he's got a shot to kind of show us what he was supposed to be last year. Mike Evans, there's no other way around it. He was a pretty big dud in Week 1. Maybe the illness he was dealing with on Sunday can be to blame for it, but just don't freak out. It's Mike Evans. He'll be fine. With the way that this offense is now compared to last year, those 2 wide receivers, there's a lot of work to go around. And I think Mike Evans is going to see plenty of work. So don't freak out about Mike Evans. Chris Godwin, on the other hand, he played great. Pretty much gave us exactly what we were hoping for in a wide receiver 2. Caught 3 of his 6 targets for 53 yards, and he had a touchdown. So, that's a solid game as a wide receiver 2. O.J. Howard, I'm not going to call him a dud, but considering what Mike Evans had going on, you'd think that O.J. Howard would get more than 5 targets. And also, he fumbled as well, so it wasn't just Jameis giving the ball away. It was an all-around pretty sloppy game for the Buccaneers, but Chris Godwin looked good, Ronald Jones looked good, everybody else was kind of lackluster. And going into this Panthers game, the Buccaneers, they allowed 100 rushing yards on exactly 30 carries to the set of San Francisco running backs, Mostert, Breida, and Coleman. That's 3.3 yards per carry. It's not bad, actually. It's pretty good. But Christian McCaffrey is a different dude from those guys. He is special. Last week, he caught 10 of his 11 targets for 81 yards, plus he carried the ball 19 times for another 128 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he was an absolute monster. Besides the DFS lineup that Adam gave us, I also put together a lineup, and I had McCaffrey as my flex. I went through with all the other positions, tried to save money here and there, was able to spend up at flex, and I was lucky enough to have Christian McCaffrey in my lineup, and he absolutely killed it. So, the Bucs defense looked better in week 1 than it did last year, but we'll see. This is going to be the real test here. Christian McCaffrey coming into town. Looking at the wide receivers for the Panthers, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuels. There's so much talk throughout the offseason about Curtis Samuels, and there's so much hype coming from what seemed to be pretty much every outlet of fantasy news. But it seemed like DJ Moore kind of showed us in week 1 why he should have been, ranked as the number 1 receiver there all along. He caught 7 of his 10 targets for 76 yards. Unfortunately, he had a pretty costly fumble. No good there, but he's obviously, his 10 targets to Curtis Samuels is 4 targets. He's obviously going to be used more as the season goes on, I think. Just hopefully he, both of these teams played pretty sloppy in week 1. They can just keep these turnovers down. They'll be just fine. Greg Olsen, unfortunately, he's already dealing with some pain in either his foot or his leg or whatever it happens to be. Again, that's one of the reasons why he was one of the tight ends I was avoiding going into the draft. I want nothing to do with old players that are constantly hurt. So that's going to do it for the Thursday night preview, and that's going to do it for the week 2 part 1 preview episode of the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast. It's a lot. So make sure you tune in for the part 2 episode, where we'll give you the whole rest of the week slate. And as always, let the fantasy gods be cruel to your opponents.
You have been listening to the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast. For more episodes and information, follow us on social media and tune in every week. Beers and Bruisers is available on Google Podcasts, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Alexa, Reach TV, or your favorite podcast service. Beers and Bruisers is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. To find out more about this and other great shows on our network, visit us online at hcuniversalnetwork.com or download the free HC Universal Network app today. Fantasy football is fun, but gambling addiction destroys lives. If you or someone you love suffers from gambling addiction, please do not be afraid to seek help. The National Council on Problem Gaming operates a national problem gambling helpline network. Contact them today at 1-800-522-4700. Thank you for tuning in to the Beers and Bruisers Fantasy Football Podcast. Please remember to drink responsibly and always look for your man downfield.